Welcome to Applicata Biblia. My name is Mark, and yeah, I'm trying something different here to record this specific lesson and maybe in future lessons as well. The setup is a little bit easier and it's straight through PowerPoint, so uh, that way all my notes are already in one form or another, and I just go directly off those notes. It's a little bit different. But again, thanks so much for stopping by. We are continuing in the series A Walk Through the Bible, where we look at characters in the Bible. And today we're not going to be looking at any one specific person. We're going to be looking at a tribe. And this is something that we got into a little bit the last time, where we see Israel is kind of not really unified. This is a problem that we find in the time of the judges. They are pretty much doing whatever they think is right in their own minds. That's a gigantic issue for them. And we're going to see that eventually they're going to get a king. So essentially, what we want to see is not that. What we want to see. Uh, uh, Looking at this real quick are these 12 tribes, and my beautiful face is down there in the corner, kind of blocking some of this at the time of recording. I'll move it over. But really what we want to see is the breakup of these 12 tribes. Now, a few lessons ago, which is basically a couple of books ago, we're in Judges now, we were in the time of Moses. Well, once Moses dies, again, they go into the new land and they conquer it based on what God tells them to do. You're supposed to dispossess all of these people and you move in, and this is the country that I gave you. This is the promise that they got, that God gave to Abraham. Now, if you just look at this map over on this right side, you see this Jordan River running through the middle of it on the right side. You see all these big names like Phoenicia, Geshur, Aram, Ammon, Amalek, Canaan. Those are the big nations that were there already. And so what I wrote down here was the breakup of the 12 tribes. Now, the Levites, that's Moses' people. They're the priests. They are the priests and the people who are to keep the law and take care of the tabernacle and all that sort of stuff, and help people with their sacrifices. They're not given big parcels of land like this. They're given cities with small pieces of land where they can subsist, and they also live on portions of uh, some of the sacrifices that the people bring to God. So, and when you look here, you can see on the east side of the Jordan, you have a half tribe of Manasseh, you have Gad and Reuben. And then on this west side, you have Asher up at the north, Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali, Issachar, and then below them another large portion to Manasseh, and then below them Ephraim, and to the west of them is Dan, and below Ephraim and Dan is Benjamin, a very small tribe, and then Judah is below that. Now Judah is the promise for Jesus. Through Judah will come the Christ. And that those kinds of promises are going to come out a little bit later. Now you see inside of Judah is Simeon. Now Simeon during the wandering years really upset God. And so there weren't a lot of Simeonites, I guess is what you call them. And so God just put them in there and they kind of just assimilated in with Judah. So that's what's going on. And we're going to talk, I think we talked a little bit about how powerful the Ammonites became, that they actually came across the Jordan into the land of Judah and attacked Judah. And we talked about, you can see Philistia over there, the Philistines, right? The Philistines are always going to be an issue for Israel. And when I say always, I mean eventually they are taken away. But for the most part, through the kings even, the Philistines will be fighting Israel. They're not a friend of Israel at all. Okay, so what are we gonna who are we gonna talk about today? Well, we're just gonna get right into the reading. We're gonna be in Judges chapter 12. It's not a really long reading, but I want to read it, and then we're just going to discuss a couple of the things that I teach, at least at the high school level, and there's a lot of other things in there to look at. But again, this is not about one of the judges. Okay, this is about one of the tribes and what happens because of the last story that we reviewed. So let's get into it. And the men of Ephraim were called together and went northward and said to Jephthah, remember Jephthah now, and he made that rash vow and everything. Why have you passed over to fight against the sons of Ammon? And you have not called on us to go with you. We will burn your house over you with fire. So, okay, okay, see, issues within Israel. There's these big things going on right within Israel that are just, wow, okay. And Jephthah said to them, I have been a man of war, my people and I having great strife with the sons of Ammon. And I called you, and you did not save me out of their hands. And seeing that you did not save us, I put my life in my hand and passed over against the Ammonites. And Jehovah delivered them into my hand. And why have you come up to me today to fight with me? And Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead. Now this is on that eastern side, okay? And fought with Ephraim. Not good. Here they're fighting. This is not good. And the men of Gilead struck Ephraim because they said, you Gileadites are fugitives from Ephraim, in the midst of Ephraim, in the midst of Manasseh. Okay. And there's a lot of things going on that we don't see. There were actually some tribes from the west side that became nomads on the east side. There's just a lot of those things going on. Gilead captured the fords of the Jordan before Ephraim, and it happened when the fugitives from Ephraim said, let me pass over. Then the men of Gilead said to them, are you an Ephraimite? And he would say no, or he said no. And they said to him, say Shibboleth. And he said Sibboleth. And they would not, and they could not frame to speak so. And they would seize them and kill them. And at that time, 42,000 of Ephraim fell. So, yeah, Ephraim comes, threatens Jephthah because they were not called up to go to war with them. And if you remember, Jephthah did call up a great army, but it was likely he was just over there on that eastern side. Jephthah judged Israel 6 years, and Jephthah the Gileadite died and was buried in the cities of, I don't know, this thing doesn't finish it for somebody, in the cities of wherever it was. Sorry. Okay, and then we see these three other judges, Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon. Sorry about that text mess up, but that's sometimes I mess up like that. So these other three judges are just kind of, they were not like anybody. They didn't do anything of great renown, although they were working for God. And were obviously judging and prophesying or whatever they needed to do at the time. Okay, so that's it. That's it for the reading. So in my study questions, the Ammonites are oppressing Ephraim, and this was established in chapter 10, and this is what we see why Jephthah's doing all these things. So why is Ephraim so angry? And this is what I want my students to think about. Why is Ephraim so angry? And then I say it's obvious that Ephraim would have wanted to get revenge on the Ammonites. You would think, right? I mean, they're on that western side when the Ammonites came over and they were attacking Judah, and they're pretty close to the whole thing going on. So what other reasons would you say is the root of Ephraim's anger? And then, of course, my leading question is, do we see this kind of pride today and when? So obviously I'm giving an answer. One thing is pride. And that is probably one of the things that we most look at. We think, well, uh, Ephraim wanted some of that, they wanted some of that glory of this conquering of this enemy. And, that's what they were looking for. And so they just had this, they were insulted that they didn't get to go fight. And that might be true. And when we get into class, this gets us into a discussion about pride and how what do we see this kind of pride today where people get angry about things like this that they think they deserve or they think they should be theirs. Um, and of course, yes, it happens all the time. Today is not any much different than it was back then. People today very much like that. They have a lot of pride. People have pride about a lot of different things, sometimes about things they shouldn't have pride about. Pride is really, unless you feel really good about what your child is doing or somebody that you love, what they're doing. Uh, Pride can well, there's an old saying, pride leads, to a fall. Pride goeth before the fall, because it makes everybody they feel entitled to things, even though in this instance, um, Jephthah rightly defends his position. He says, this has been going on for a very long time. Where were you? You could have come over any time, but oh yeah, now that we win and we conquer them, you want some of this glory. Is that what it is? And it's probably more than likely a little bit more than just the glory. Because back then, when you would go to war against somebody, if you beat them, if you conquered them, you also got the spoils. And we are going to see other times when uh, people are not called up. They get upset because they want part of those spoils. When they see somebody winning, they want you guys got all the good stuff and we want some of it. So there's probably some of that greed involved in there, and this idea of vengeance against their enemies. They wanted vengeance. They want all these things. And this is not what's going on. This is justice that God is serving against Israel's enemies. And again, it has nothing to do with anybody personally, but it has more to do with the fact that these people, the Philistines, the Ammonites, especially all of them, but the Ammonites and the Amalekites, they just performed all kinds of horrific idolatry it's basically we don't even want to talk about how terrible it was, that it just really irritated God to the point where he wanted them destroyed. And Israel was supposed to be part of that judgment. They were the judgment tool that God was using. Okay, so that is one of the lessons we learn, of course. And then we just went over what Jephthah's answer is. And what was the result of Ephraim's threats? Well, thousands of them were killed by the hand of their own relatives. And this is something that, again, we just see the disunity of what's going on here. In Judges, it says specifically towards the end there, I think it's in the, or at the end of Joshua, somewhere in there, either in the beginning of Judges or the end of Joshua, it says that the people were just doing whatever was right in their sight. Now, if you're doing well, if you're working for God, okay, but that's not what that means. What that means is they were not regarding God, and they were just doing whatever they want. Okay, so I asked my students to list 3 examples of good pride, and I already named one. Now, obviously, uh, pride has a context. Now, it's it's something that if you're a parent or you're a brother or a sister or whoever, a friend, and you see that other person doing something good, doing something well, you feel a sense of pride, especially if you see them working really hard and for whatever. And there are, within that context, whatever it is, if it's something that they've worked for and they've really put in the effort and it's a good thing, right? It helps people. You might go and help people. Maybe you're on a mission or something. You go to Haiti. I know a person who does that, and he serves people. That's what he does, and he does well. And there's a sense that when I see him doing that, I have my own sense of pride about knowing that person. Not that I think anybody's better than anybody or anything like that. I just feel really good about what he's doing. It's a good godly thing. So pride has a context, and there is obviously issues with the wrong kind of pride. Being prideful and expecting things and having the wrong attitude about what I need to get and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's encapsulates that short little story there, and I think God puts that in there to show that unity is an absolute. And when Jesus comes along, okay, I always do this. Here's the Jesus part of the story. When Jesus comes along, and before he leaves and he's getting with his disciples, and just go to John chapter 13 and start reading about around in 13 through maybe 17, the last things that he's getting across to them is that he is one with God, and they are one with him, and they are one with each other, and they are to love one another, and they are to, obviously love God's creation and go do what they're supposed to do after that, even though they don't know exactly what they need to do. But that is the main message that I get out of this, because I'm looking at the disunity and the harm that it is bringing to Israel. And that message extends all the way into the New Testament, especially when we're talking about the church. The church needs to be one. It needs to be unified. It needs to look at Jesus and understand what he means when he basically says, all authority has been given to me from God, and I am one with God, and you are one with me. And that is to be our Christian walk. Now, obviously, our Christian walk means we are trying and doing good in our lives because God has changed us through Jesus. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.